What happens when the words you never dared to speak become louder than your own voice after you are gone? What if a single sentence, hidden for years, carried the power to shatter everything your loved ones believed about you? Tonight, we are not just telling a story. We are opening a wound that was never meant to heal, a secret locked in silence until the very last breath. Picture this. A man in his 40s lies in a stark white hospital bed. His body is weak, but his mind is heavy, chained not by machines, but by regret. Beside him sits his loyal dog, eyes glossy, sensing what no one else dares to admit. The room is drenched in daylight, seeping through half-open curtains, and yet the air feels unbearably heavy, thick with words unsaid. A clock ticks relentlessly on the wall, each second reminding him of the confessions he chose to bury. The silence is deafening, the kind of silence that carries weight, the kind that whispers louder than screams. You know that silence, don't you? That moment when you swallow your truth because you fear what it might cause. Maybe you kept a letter in a drawer. Maybe you left a message unsent. Maybe you held back words you thought would protect someone, but instead, they became the very chains that bind you. What happens when the words you hide become your legacy? This man carried that burden for years. He wrote a letter but never mailed it. He signed his name, but never let the ink reach another set of eyes. It stayed sealed, hidden, waiting. And as he lay there, knowing his time was ending, the letter seemed to pulse like a living thing, a forbidden truth begging to be freed. His hand trembled whenever he thought about it. His heart raced at the thought of what those words could do. But fear kept it locked away. Fear that the truth would destroy everything. And isn't that what we all fear? That if people knew the truth, the real truth, they would see us differently. They would love us less. They would never forgive us. You and I know that secrets don't stay buried forever. They outlive us. They crawl out of the shadows at the worst possible moment. And sometimes, the truth comes too late, when we are no longer here to explain, to defend, or to ask for forgiveness. This story is not just about a letter. It is about the cost of silence, the curse of unfinished words, the haunting weight of regret. It is about a man who chose not to speak, and how that choice became louder than anything he ever said in his life. Imagine his family, standing by his bed holding his hand, never suspecting that in a drawer nearby lay the secret that would change everything. Imagine the loyal dog watching with knowing eyes, as if guarding not just a man, but a truth too heavy to be spoken. The question is not just about him. The question is about you. What have you left unsaid? What letter remains hidden in your life? What truth have you locked away, hoping no one would ever read it? Because tonight, we will open his letter. We will read the words he never had the courage to send, and we will face the forbidden secret hidden in the very last line. Before we open this letter, I want to ask you something. If stories like this touch your heart, if you believe some secrets should never remain hidden, subscribe now and turn on notifications, because every week we bring you the letters the world was never meant to read. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and let's go deeper into the story. The letter remained hidden, untouched, like a shadow in the corner of his life. It was not a long letter, yet every sentence carried the weight of 1,000 unshed tears. He had written it during a sleepless night years earlier, his hands trembling as he poured out emotions he never dared to speak aloud. Folded once, sealed tightly, and locked in the drawer beside his bed, it became both his confession and his curse. Every time he opened that drawer, the envelope seemed to stare back at him, daring him to either send it or burn it. But he did neither. He simply closed the drawer and walked away, leaving the truth imprisoned in silence. The silence, however, was never quiet. It screamed in his mind. At work, he felt it pressing on his chest. At family gatherings, it echoed in the laughter he could not fully join. At night, when the house fell still, it pulsed like a heartbeat beneath the floorboards, reminding him that he had unfinished business. His dog would sit by his feet, head tilted, sensing the storm that brewed inside a man who seemed calm to everyone else. The world saw a father, a friend, a husband who carried himself with dignity. But behind the surface was a man haunted by a truth he never released. He convinced himself that hiding the letter was an act of love. He told himself that some truths were better buried, that some revelations would destroy rather than heal. He believed silence would protect his family, protect their memories of him, protect their faith in who he appeared to be. But silence is never protection. Silence is a prison, and every day that passed, the bars grew thicker, the walls higher, until even he was trapped inside the cage he built. The unopened letter was not just paper. It was a mirror of everything he feared, every word he suppressed, every moment he lacked courage. And though his family never saw it, they felt it in ways they could not name. They noticed the way his smile sometimes faltered. They saw the distant look in his eyes when conversations grew too close to the truth. They felt the gap at the dinner table, the weight of something unspoken hanging in the air. They could not explain it, but they knew something was missing, and that knowledge left its own kind of scar. What about you? Have you ever carried a secret so heavy it shaped the way you lived? Have you ever swallowed words in the hope of protecting someone, only to realize you were only protecting yourself from the fear of their reaction? Have you ever felt the sting of regret when you thought of what might happen if tomorrow never came and your truth remained locked away forever? This is why the unopened letter matters. Because it is not just his story, it is the reflection of a choice many of us make. The choice to hide, the choice to delay, the choice to let silence speak louder than our voice. But silence, my friend, never stays silent. It grows, it spreads, it seeps into everything you touch. So let me ask you this, and be honest with yourself. Have you ever kept words locked inside your heart? Words you wish you had spoken before it was too late? Write it in the comments below. The weight of silence grew heavier with each passing year, pressing against his chest like a stone he could never move. At night, when the house grew quiet and the world around him rested, he lay awake, eyes open to the dark ceiling, listening to the endless rhythm of the clock on the wall. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Each sound reminded him that time was slipping through his fingers, that tomorrow was never promised, and yet the letter remained sealed, his secret imprisoned in ink and paper. He often reached for it, his hand trembling as it hovered over the drawer, but fear always pulled him back. He told himself it was not the right time, that tomorrow he would decide, but tomorrow always became another day of silence. His loyal dog sensed it all. The animal never needed words to understand the storm inside its master. On those long sleepless nights, the dog would quietly jump onto the foot of the bed, curl beside him, and rest its head on his legs as if to carry some of the weight he refused to release. When his breathing grew shallow, the dog's ears would twitch, its eyes glowing in the dim light, reflecting back the truth no one else could see. The animal was his silent witness, the keeper of his hidden world, the only soul who knew that his heart carried something more than blood. It carried regret. By day, he tried to wear a mask. He smiled at neighbors, greeted co-workers, and carried on as though nothing was wrong. But silence is not invisible. It leaks into the way you walk, the way you look at people, the way your eyes betray what your mouth refuses to say. His family noticed. His wife sometimes caught him staring out the window too long, his gaze lost in a distance she could not follow. His children wondered why he seemed distracted, even when they spoke directly to him. At family dinners, his fork would pause halfway to his mouth, his mind drifting far away, pulled into the prison of his own thoughts. They did not know the cause, but they felt the absence, the void, the strange distance that silence creates. The house itself began to echo with it. Rooms that once carried laughter now felt hollow. The smell of coffee in the morning no longer warmed his spirit, because regret always found its way into the cup. The sound of rain on the windows brought no peace, only reminders of tears he never let fall. Even sunlight, breaking through the curtains, seemed harsh, as though the world was trying to expose the truth he fought so hard to bury. And so, night after night, he rehearsed the same torment. He replayed moments when he could have spoken and chose not to. He relived conversations where the truth was on his lips but locked itself inside before crossing into sound. He thought of the letter, how easy it would be to open it, to let the words fly free. Yet every time fear whispered, "What if this destroys them? What if they never forgive you? What if your truth brings only pain?" And so he stayed silent. The weight of silence does not only live in the mind, it creeps into the body. His shoulders slumped lower, his back ached more, and his eyes grew darker with exhaustion. His skin carried the marks of endless nights without sleep. Still, he said nothing. To the world, he appeared strong enough. To himself, he was crumbling. And to his loyal dog, lying at his side, he was a man trapped in a prison of his own making, chained not by iron, but by words left unspoken. When the man finally breathed his last breath, silence filled the room in a way that was no longer just heavy, it was final. The loyal dog curled closer to his empty body, refusing to move, as though guarding him even from death itself. His family gathered around, hearts torn between grief and disbelief, their tears mixing with the sterile smell of hospital walls. Yet none of them knew that the real storm was not in the room, but in the drawer where his secret had waited for years. After the funeral, when the house grew unbearably quiet, it was his wife who discovered it. She was cleaning the bedroom, her hands moving almost mechanically, when she opened that drawer and saw the envelope. Her fingers froze. The handwriting on the front was unmistakably his. She held it as though it burned her skin, because she already sensed that inside this fragile piece of paper lay something that could never be taken back. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. The paper was aged, its edges yellowed with time, the ink slightly smudged as though tears had touched it long ago. She unfolded it carefully, her heart racing. Every line she read carried the weight of a man she thought she knew, but suddenly realized she did not. His words spilled across the page like confessions whispered in the dark. He spoke of regrets, of choices he wished he had made differently, of truths he had buried because he feared they would cause pain. Each sentence was another crack in the image she had built of him over the years. And then she reached the bottom of the page, the last line. It stood alone, written with a heavier hand, as though he knew this would be the sentence that carried everything. Her eyes lingered on it, struggling to believe the words staring back at her. It was not a message of peace. It was not a simple farewell. It was a forbidden truth, one so heavy it shattered the ground she stood on. The air in the room thickened, her chest tightened, and the letter slipped slightly from her grasp as tears blurred the ink. Her children, noticing her reaction, leaned in to read. Their faces shifted from confusion to shock, from sadness to something much deeper, a fracture that cut through the very foundation of who they believed their father to be. The loyal dog, now lying near the bed, let out a low whine, as if mourning not just his absence, but the devastation of what had been revealed. The last line was more than words. It was a confession that altered memories, rewrote stories, and recast the man they loved into someone they barely recognized. It was the kind of truth that cannot be unheard, the kind of revelation that lives on long after the body has been laid to rest. And it left them with more questions than answers, more pain than closure, more silence than comfort. Secrets are heavy, but when they surface, they do not arrive quietly. They arrive like storms, tearing apart everything in their path. And this storm came in a single sentence, one final line that turned grief into something far darker. What do you think those final words were? Comment below before we move forward. The room was filled with a silence unlike any they had ever known. It was not the silence of mourning or the hush of grief. It was the silence that follows when truth finally comes to light, but far too late to change anything. The letter lay open on the bed, its words bleeding into their hearts like poison disguised as ink. Tears fell directly onto the page, smudging the handwriting he had once carved so carefully, turning some words into blurred shadows, as though even the paper wished to hide them again. His wife pressed her hand against her chest, as if to hold together a heart that threatened to break apart. His children stood frozen, their minds racing through every memory they had of their father, each recollection now tainted, rewritten by the weight of that final forbidden line. Broken trust is unlike any other pain. It is not sharp at first, but heavy, slow, and suffocating. They replayed birthdays, conversations at the dinner table, long drives, and quiet nights in the living room. Every smile now carried suspicion. Every hug now felt incomplete. Memories they once cherished turned fragile in an instant, like glass shattered into pieces too sharp to hold. The man they thought they knew no longer existed. In his place was a stranger, whose truth arrived too late for explanations, too late for forgiveness, too late for redemption. The dog, still lying close to the bed, shifted its gaze between the family and the letter, letting out soft whines as if mourning not only the loss of its master, but the fracture of the home left behind. The loyal companion had felt the storm long before the words were read, but now the storm was no longer invisible. It ripped through every corner of the room, breaking the fragile threads that held their family's story together. The truth is relentless. It does not wait for the right moment. It does not ask if hearts are ready. It comes like a thief, stealing peace, rewriting lives, arriving when the one who spoke it is no longer there to carry the weight of the consequences. His silence had been his shield, his way of delaying the inevitable. But when the shield fell, it cut deeper than a sword ever could. His family was left not only grieving his absence, but grieving the man they thought they had, the man they thought they knew, the man they thought loved them in the way they believed. The pain of truth arriving too late is that it leaves no chance for closure, no opportunity for questions, no space for explanations, no possibility for reconciliation. It leaves only the echo of words that cannot be unsaid, words that live in the minds of the living, reshaping their days, haunting their nights. His children lay awake in their beds, staring into the dark, whispering the last line over and over, trying to understand, trying to forgive, trying to heal. But healing cannot come from silence. Healing requires presence, honesty, the courage to face the storm together. And now, all of that was gone. The weight of his forbidden secret did not die with him. It multiplied in those who remained. The letter became a ghost in the house, resting on the nightstand like a cursed relic. Every glance toward it reopened the wound. Every thought of it tore another piece of trust apart. What was meant to be hidden forever had finally been revealed, and its revelation came at the cruelest time, when truth could no longer lead to change, but only to pain. The legacy of his secret did not vanish when the coffin was lowered into the ground. Death ended his breath, but not his silence. The letter he left behind became more than paper. It became a living wound, an echo that refused to fade. It sat on the nightstand like a ghost, a forbidden relic that whispered to anyone who dared to look at it. Every word written inside clung to the family like chains, reminding them that the man they loved had carried truths he never trusted them to face. His silence outlived him, and that silence, instead of protecting them, became the curse that reshaped their lives. For his wife, the letter was not just a revelation, it was a betrayal. Each morning she woke up and reached across the bed expecting to find him, only to feel emptiness. And next to that emptiness lay the folded paper, the reminder that even when he had been alive, she had never truly known all of him. She held the letter against her chest as if pressing it harder could force answers from the ink, but the only response she received was the echo of her own sobs. For his children, the letter became a lens through which every memory was re-examined. They replayed their father's laughter, his advice, his moments of tenderness, and asked themselves if those gestures had been true, or if they had been masks hiding the forbidden truth written in the last line. What should have been memories of love now felt like puzzles with missing pieces. The loyal dog still lingered near his side of the bed, its eyes scanning the room as if searching for a master who would never return. Even the animal seemed to sense that something more than death had stolen him away, that the truth revealed after his passing had fractured the very home he had built. And so the legacy of his silence grew, spreading from one heart to another, weaving itself into every corner of their house, every conversation, every tear that fell. You see, secrets are not buried with the body. They rise. They seep into the lives of those left behind, shaping the way they remember, the way they trust, the way they believe in love, family, and faith. His silence did not die with him. It multiplied, becoming a story told in whispers, a warning carried in the eyes of his children, a scar his wife will carry until her last breath. That is the true legacy of unfinished words. They do not fade. They remain. And perhaps the most haunting part of this story is not the man himself, but the mirror he leaves for you and me. How many of us are carrying letters we never sent? How many of us are holding back words we fear to speak, convinced that silence will protect the ones we love? But silence is not protection. It is poison. It waits. It festers, and one day it explodes. Not in your lifetime, perhaps, but in the lives of those who will be forced to carry it when you are gone. So I ask you, what legacy are you building right now? Are you leaving behind truth, love, and courage? Or are you leaving behind questions, regrets, and secrets that will haunt the ones you claim to protect? Have you ever thought about writing words you were too afraid to say? If you have, type, "I know the weight of silence" in the comments. If you promise yourself today to never let silence define you, write, "I choose truth." These words may seem small, but they are the beginning of freedom, the breaking of chains, the first step toward living without regret. But remember, this is not the only story. This is not the only letter that carried the power to destroy. In our next video, you will hear about another letter. A letter that wasn't a love story at all. It was the letter that destroyed everything someone believed. Would you dare to read such a letter? Comment below. I will read it. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Subscribe right now and become part of a community where hidden secrets are revealed and forbidden truths are finally set free. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that silence destroys more than words ever could. And don't look away, because the next letter is darker, more heartbreaking, and more dangerous than anything you have heard tonight. This isn't just a story. This is a warning,